personal struggles. I'm not immune to situations that can be a trial for me. But I gain different experiences in my walk with the Lord that show me where I still need to improve. Maybe you encounter that. But I find areas where I still have to grow up a little bit. When I encounter a trial, I realize through preparing this lesson for Sunday school that I need to be careful, that I need to Oh, okay. It's not me. Oh, okay. Well, do. What was I? We were doing a lot of do's in that sentence, I think. I encounter trials and know those things. But I find for myself, there are areas where I have to be careful because the question that I think I need to ask myself, now this is me. I'm reflecting on the thoughts I had for the lesson. Can God trust me to make the right choice? Can God trust me to be a good example of what I say I believe before other people? Because I find that if all I'm going to do is offer excuses in real life, how far removed is it before I'm offering him excuses? Shouldn't I be mindful and careful of that? I would hope it means others in my life feel a level of trust towards me, but most importantly, that God can look at me and say, I trust my servant Danny will do the best he can. I think about life. There are times that I may not want to do something I need to do. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever had something you needed to do and you just didn't want to do it? Very much so. Isn't that life? I mean, we all have those experiences, right? There are times I may not feel like putting forth the effort I need to because in my flesh, I just don't want to deal with it. But there are times, I can't speak for you, I'll speak for me. Maybe you've never had to do this. If you haven't, well, kudos for you. You pray for me. There are times I've had to eat a big old bowl of get over it, Danny. I have to press forward with responsibilities because others may be trusting me to do my part. Someone may be depending on me to have follow through so they can follow through, so that they can do something they need to get done. But my flesh may be saying, but I don't want to do this right now. But the Lord may be showing me, I need you to do this anyway. You just need to get over yourself. And I think about Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not into whose understanding? My own. I'll make it personal. Because if I lean on my own, then you know what? Can the Lord really trust me? I might choose not to do something just because it's inconvenient to me. And the flesh will really try and war with us. And I'll ask a question, but you do not have to raise your hands as an answer. I don't mind. I like to be interactive with you as the audience, but this is one I'll just leave it to you. And if you'd like to self-reflect about it, you do it. Again, you don't have to like, oh, yeah, that's me. I mean, if you want to, if that's going to unburden your heart and make you feel better, you do it, but I'm not expecting it. Have you ever been at home on a Sunday evening and felt like not going to work the next Monday morning? I mean, there are days where that may be an encounter for someone. I live a very fortunate experience. And my wife is sometimes a good humbling dose to me in a good way. I have been so blessed to have a job I love. I have been very fortunate. And my wife, we were talking one time about something, and she said to me, not hateful, not smarty, because she loves me, but it helped me put it in perspective. She just said, well, Danny, not everybody has been so fortunate. And I respect that, and I understand that. So as much as I love my job, I'm still human, and I'm technically nearing retirement. Monday morning can still pose for me, back at it, even though I love my job. So I can't imagine someone who hates their job. So I would say a lot of us have felt that way. And there are times in our lives where we have a flexibility of time off, and it won't make it hard on our coworkers if we take it off. So we might be able to have times in our life where we can choose to rest on that following Monday morning if we want to. But is that always going to be the case? So we do what we need to do, don't we? The response to that question is individual to you. But this I know, others are watching us and evaluating our profession of faith by the choices they see us make. I'll say that again. Others are watching us and evaluating our professions of faith by the choices they see us make. Someone who does not believe the way we do, I'll use me. If someone doesn't believe the way I do and they hear me speak about my belief and understanding of truth, that person will start to evaluate my actions most likely more harshly than they will evaluate the actions of my peers who do not hold the same profession. It doesn't matter if it's not fair, brother and sister, get over it. That's called life. They will do it. They will evaluate my choices and my actions, especially in light of the impact it has on them. If they feel like I am open about what I say I believe, and they will be most likely more harsh, especially if they don't believe the same way. When someone who doesn't believe the way we do and they hear us speak about it, it may not be fair, but they do start an evaluation process in their mind of what they feel about what we say. And I think about, I'm just using the workplace as an analogy. I'll reference this later. There's a lot of things we can use. This one's just easy because where do most of us spend our days? On a workplace, right? You spend a lot of your time there if that's your situation. So my question can become, can my superiors trust me to do my job? That's a fair question to ask myself. Can they trust me to be there and to do my job? And I think any human has days. I have them. I can have them in the middle of a day where you're sitting there and you're like, man, I just don't feel it. Too bad, so sad. You don't get to operate on feeling always, do you? I know that I feel that way because I'm just a human being. But if I want to be trusted, if I want to exhibit a mature adult attitude, I have to often get over it. I have to move on. I'm not talking about times of sickness when you shouldn't be. I don't want you spreading your nasty germs. Stay home. Don't be up there coughing in my business. You ain't got no business. Get your tail in home. You only be around there spreading that stuff. There is a time and place. I mean, there's a time and place for that. Ain't nobody got time for your stuff. You're making it. What if they take it home to an elderly parent who lives with them? I have a coworker who has that, who's 96. She don't need that. You need to be mindful and respectful. Especially stay away from that person if you are going to risk being there. And I'm not talking about people can have pre-planned time off because the devil can put things in mind. He'll take people to an extreme. They can't, I can't ever miss. I'm being reasonable. If you have pre-planned time off that you've worked out with your superior and it doesn't make it inconvenient and it's okay, most people know that you're trying and they'll work with you. As a matter of fact, if you're trusted, not only will they work with you, they'll try to make sure you don't feel like you need to change it because they value you, because you're there and you're present. I am fortunate. I am older in my career. I have such time available that I can use as needed, but as needed, not always as wanted. The as wanted falls under a very different category in my career. I have some of that as well available, but I have to work that out with my superiors, and there's guidelines that regulate that. And I can only relate to my position, and this is what I think about. When I think about that concept of trust in that silly little picture, I can always trust God. He's been nothing but good to me. I mean, that could make me choke up and emotional if I sat and thought about it, probably. But can God trust me? And you know what? You may say, and I'll get to this in a minute, I'm just using workplace as an analogy. And in my field of work, if I'm out, I don't just get to be gone. It's just not a luxury I have. That's just part of my career. It's part of the responsibility I accepted. Someone must take my place. You can't leave children in a room alone if you have any sense. You don't leave them in there by themselves very long. There are not a lot of people in this community who are willing to be a substitute teacher. And that was not always the case in my career. I'm about 5 or so years, 5.5 from my retirement. And in my early days, it wasn't the case. People used to want to work. They wanted their foot in the door, and especially in one of the main employers of the county. That was just a reality we dealt with. My sister benefited from that for almost 20 years. And she loved it. And that was kind of special to me that we had that in common. But we used to have, and I'm just speaking from the past, trusted individuals who would faithfully be there and who were available and willing. And let me tell you, that is not the case anymore. If I just decide at the last minute that I'm not going to go to school, and maybe deep down I know I could press forward, I run the risk that the school may not find anybody for me. That is a major reality right now. Well, guess who has to fill in if they can't find somebody for me? My coworkers during their planning time. My coworkers during their time they have to prepare for students, contact parents, have meetings, go to the bathroom. that is when they have to come and they have to fill in for me. I've had to do it a couple times this year already for somebody, and that's all right. I'm just doing my duty. They couldn't help it. But my coworkers have to take up that slack. How fair is it to them if I just flippantly decide that I'm going to stay home when I could really be there? That bothers me. That makes me feel like that's not fair to my coworkers. And I have never seen such times in my life where people do not want to work. So much so, and I'm going to give you a scenario my coworker gave me, it got me. So much so, they just decide they're not going to go. I guess they just, I can't live that reality. My coworker, this is a true scenario, and we talk about having trust, right? When you go somewhere, do you trust them? If you go to a doctor's office, you trust them to follow through, right? Sister Tammy takes that very seriously for patients who need tests. I'm thankful to have someone who'll take it serious because we have a generation of people. I didn't get to it today. Well, I'm glad that ain't your test. It might be mine. Oh, how convenient you didn't get to it. Now, that'll rile me up. You little sorry butt. Do your job. You'll see a little Mr. Eldredge come out. I don't like that attitude. It's sorriness. Period. A coworker of mine, I'm not making this up, his older mom, and I would about guarantee you they've called her. Why did they call her the older individual? She's trusted. She's been tried and proven. She does her job. Can God trust me? Am I tried and proven? Am I giving that example before other people? But my coworker's older mom went back to work. She had retired and traveling with her husband. And this is what he was sharing. Now, this is one day this week, I think, and I just stood there listening. Apparently, many at this where she worked, which I will not name, many of the new workers there, they don't show up if they don't want to. And they simply don't follow through when they're there with certain things. It's appalling. His poor mama is having to cover people's work that's not been done. She's doing a cleanup, you could say, of the situations that they've let fall short. And she literally, when she has to call people, has nothing to offer those other individuals, other than when they're mad, you're right. I'm sorry. It simply wasn't done. And it's probably embarrassing to her and frustrating because it's not even her fault. And I thought about that. He's just given. Now, again, this is just one real life example, and I'll allude to some others later. What if I adopted that same work attitude towards serving God as a lot of employees, unfortunately, who don't show up and who don't follow through have adopted toward their profession? Who could you trust? You say, be here at such and such time. Honey, they don't show up at work on time. Are they going to show up at a work day on time? Are they going to show up? They don't show up to work. And that's supposed to pay you bills. Well, are they going to be trusted to follow through and show up when you have a situation where you're supposed to get together and get something done because you have an upcoming event? I mean, those are real life situations, right? Well, I think about that and I think, okay, for me, this became very personal thinking. God, can you trust me? I mean, we can talk about all these real life examples that all of us are probably witnessing in the real world, but I want to personalize it to Danny and my experience. God, do you ever look at me and think that? Well, I hope he shows up. I hope I can count on him. What if I adopted that same attitude? How on this earth could God trust me? How on this earth could an individual find me sincere and reliable if that is the attitude I adopted? And for me, this comes very personally because I think about things. My struggles are different than yours. If I were talking to a coworker who's a mom, we don't have the same issues often. We might at work. Her issues she contends with at home are very different than mine because we are two different people. So when I thought about this, I thought about, man, I need to be more serious about this because I want God to trust me. Now, I had stuff come to my mind that I'm not going to share. That's none of your business. Pardon my frankness. I know you don't want to know. I'm being silly. But it's personal to me. And I need to reflect on that. And I need to be cautious. And I need to think about that. And I think about how, someone could take my job. I'm just using job. You could use family. You can use friendships. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later if time allows. How on this earth could you find me sincere and reliable? And there's always somebody, isn't there? Oh, that's different, Brother Danny. Serving God is much more important than your job. Well, I understand. There's an aspect of truth to serving God that is valuable. But you going to tell me that viewpoint will apply to your unbelieving coworker you're trying to witness to? They ain't going to give one flip about what you got to say. They don't even agree with you to begin with. And I'm going to be their light. And they're looking at me thinking, I can't even rely on you, Danny. Now, how am I being a light? That I have something that I've got something to offer them that's better than what they have. I mean, that frustrates me to think that, Danny, I'm putting it on me. I better be mindful, hadn't I? If I'm going to say to someone who doesn't believe the way I do, what I've got's better, I better have something better to offer them. Because if I don't, they ain't going to have one thing to listen to what I have to say. And it begins often for people using work scenario. How am I as an employee? What example am I giving? Or in family, how are you as a family member? How are you as a friend? Whatever the situation is. Someone could say, oh, that's different. But I think how that viewpoint would not ring true for someone who does not believe the same way. It is not going to ring inspirational to their ears if they don't share my beliefs. I did not ring inspiration in their ears. As a matter of fact, I've given the devil fodder to say, yeah, you don't want nothing to do with what they got, do you? That's just as fair as I can be, because the devil's real. He's going to use anything he can use. He's not fair. He's not going to be fair to me. If I want to convince somebody that serving God is important, I need to be someone they view as trustworthy. My witness begins with my character and the traits others see in me as they observe my actions and my choices. And I think about that. I really thought about this as part of this lesson. I pray that I ask God to help me to have the right attitude around others whom I hope to positively influence, especially if I want to influence them in a spiritual way. How am I viewed, as trustworthy or not? If the unbelieving coworker can't even trust me, and I'm just using that as an example, to do my job well, why would they entrust their needs for spiritual advice, something that we view as much more important? It's got to begin somewhere. It has to. Often when you teach young children something, do you talk about it as a concept or do you give them an example? You give them an example because when they're little, they're very concrete. They have to see it, touch it, feel it, do it, act it out. They're little. Their brain's developing. The idea of a concept is much further down the road for some of them. So you start with what they can understand. How's it any different with someone who doesn't believe the same as us? It starts with how they view me. Whether it's fair or not, if I'm looking for life to be fair, I'm going to be often upset, aren't I? I can just do the best I can, that with God's help. If they can't trust me, then they're not going to take my advice. And that is just one example. You could use in your own mind, if you wanted to think about it, an entirely different metaphor than just what I've used. I think very easily of family relationships and maintaining trust. What does the family feel and think and experience with me? We could use friendships, couldn't we? And maintaining trust in those friendships. And how does that play out? It really just depends on whatever God can use to help you. For me, when I sat down to prepare this, that was just the analogy that was easy for me to work with. In Isaiah 12:2, behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord Jehovah is my strength and my song. He also is become my salvation. And I think about that. And we're all going to face different life situations. I need God's strength to face the challenges of a given day. Temptations and trials will come. That lady failed because a group of people got distracted. God forbid I allow distractions from the enemy to cause me to stray. I don't know who I could impact. I don't know who I could negatively influence. And there are areas for me in my own self-reflection where I am trying to work to get better with God's help. I haven't mastered, but I am trying, I've recognized in this lesson, I need to try a little harder. And I'm putting it on me first. And I want God to trust me. And sadly, it's a real struggle sometimes when the devil is pounding on you. It can be a real struggle on Sunday night when it's tempting to rest the following Monday morning. The struggle can be real. But we do what we have to do because it's the right thing to do. And God's strength is sufficient, as we read. God is faithful. I'm thankful during the times of trial and discouragement, and I'm thankful he'll be there when I need him. But I have to choose to press forward. I have to choose to build a history and experience with him before others that shows he can trust me and they can trust me too. Just like we press forward and build trusting relationships with coworkers, family members, or friends, whatever analogy you want to use. And I'm thankful that unfortunately when I failed, God didn't hold those times against me. Now, sadly, people will hold failures against you. People can hold grudges, and you can work very hard to build back trust. But you know what? God knows the intentions and sincerity of our efforts. But with people, we often are left to do the best we can, aren't we? People can get an attitude toward us, and they're never willing to give us a chance. But I would hope, and this is what I thought about when I reflected on that, when you think about when someone wants to get an attitude, if it were me, toward me, I hope my personal actions, my personal attitudes, and my personal choices are not adding evidence to substantiate their personal disdain for me. Now think about, did that make sense? I hope my personal actions and attitudes are not adding evidence to substantiate their personal disdain for me. And I hope someone can't say, for example, yeah, I don't count on him being here tomorrow because you just never know with him. Would that be fair? I've added evidence to substantiate their disdain. And whether it's fair or not, that now reflects on the God I say I serve, because people will equate the two, especially when you share what you believe. And it's so different, radically different than some people. What if, that's just using one example, what if I use the family? I hope family members can't say, yeah, he said he'd take care of those things on our behalf. You don't know how. You know how it goes. He'll do it if he wants to. If he don't feel like it, well, it may not get done. Could my family say that about me? My family recently entrusted me with something very important. With that came me responsible for following through. And I tried to update. Now, I'm not using me. I'm not glorifying myself. I just realized don't let the devil put that there. I don't wish what I had to go through upon you. I'm not offering this as something I wanted to even have to choose for myself. I'd rather have my sister. But life happens, doesn't it? But we went through that process. But you know what? Can I be trusted? What if it's with friendships? I hope friends can't say with legitimacy, yeah, he loves to act when he's needed and can look good, but you just hope you don't need him to complete something. It may or may not get done. I mean, we all probably, unfortunately, have encountered life with people, right? We live in the real world. But God forbid, and I say this with a please, Lord, added in there, that if that applies to me, help me get victory. Help me evaluate and self-reflect on my life. And I'm telling you, there's things I've reflected on with me and God, and I'm thinking, I need to, God help me. I want to get better. I want him to trust me. Because if people feel this way, how is God viewing my witness for him? And that seriousness of that struck me. Can he trust me? God expects me to be the best example I can be for Danny. Who am I supposed to be an example for? For others, but who am I supposed to represent? I'm supposed to represent him. This ain't just about me. It's easy to get a little self-centered. We want to do what we want to do, don't we? But I'm saying I represent him, and the gravity of that thought hit me very hard. Can he trust me? Do I represent him? When I say just something just because I want to say it, did I represent him well? When I take action just because I feel I'm justified with that action, did I represent him well? And I thought about that. It's not that we just do what we do because it's the right thing for ourselves. But I'm claiming to be an example for who? Him. That's huge. That's a huge responsibility, and one that I should not take lightly. And I thought about, if we may go back as I'm getting near the end here, to that little silly example, and they got distracted. There are times when the devil will try to distract us, won't he? And you think about that little silly image. The people who were supposed to be there for her literally walked away right when she needed them most. When someone brought a tray of, let's say, goodies into the office, they turned and went over there. And it's kind of comical, but the devil's real. And he'll try to do the same thing to me. I may be trying for the Lord, but the devil will try to bring something my way to distract me. And I know, as I think about this lesson in light of what I want to work on with me and God, I know the devil will try to distract me. But can God trust me? Will I follow through? God help me. And if I don't get it right, God help me to correct it and continue in the right trajectory. He'll give me correction or whatever as I need it. But I'm also so thankful he'll give me help and encouragement. The devil may try to convince me that there's something better. And then I could risk walking away from something right when God is trusting me to do something for him. And I thought that's so sad to think about. And the duty I have to submit to God, James 4:7, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And there will always be people who want you to submit to them and their ideologies, aren't there? There are always people who have the right way. There are always people who have big ideas. There are always people who can tell you why you're wrong and they're right. I mean, there's always that situation. We live in the real world. But I want to make sure I'm following God's way. I want God to be able to trust that I'll do what he knows is best for my life. And I thought about just life examples. Everybody got an opinion. If you're looking for a car, you can talk to 3 different people. You'll get 3 different suggestions. If you're looking for a home, you can talk to 3 different realtors. You'll get 3 different suggestions. It's just life, isn't it? It's just the nature of being a human being. But God can direct unfailingly in the right direction. And for that, I am so thankful. But here's the question I ask myself in reflection. Will I listen? Can he trust me? Sometimes it's easy to be overcome with all the quote-unquote voices around us. Sometimes you got to crowd those out. The devil can try to fill your ears or your mind with a lot of noise, can he? This one says this, that one says that. Well, my concern, what does thus saith the Lord? He will lead unfailingly. I need to be settled so that I can hear his still small voice. And I thought about, when do parents begin to know they can't trust their children? When the children are caught doing differently than they said they would do. That's just common sense, isn't it? The children didn't listen and did their own thing. So parents understand they got to monitor better and help the kid build back trust. Well, I thought about that as a literal, and I asked myself, can God trust me? If I say I'm his child, am I listening? As a child of God, I just personally want to reflect on that concept of trust. How well can God trust me to make the decisions based on what I know he has shown me to do? How well do I listen? I want to take it seriously. And I use that, I just used a specific example of work, but you can use whatever applies to your life. That's a very convenient, easy one, isn't it? Because, for most of us, that's what we deal with. All of us can relate to and understand, most likely, that example to some degree. For me, I hope it helped encourage thoughtful self-reflection. And if you didn't need it and you feel like that part of your life is mastered, then it can encourage thoughtful self-reflection in prayer for me. You pray for me. You pray for me that I'll work every day to be someone who seeks God's guidance. Because in the end, I want the Lord to be able to say this about me. Danny is a servant I can trust.
Appreciate that good lesson this morning. If we put these things right on ourselves, take it on a personal agenda to look at ourselves, stay in our lane and look at ourselves. It'll help us all greatly. I was thinking what Brother Danny said about somebody that you couldn't count on maybe or whatever. And that reputation gets built. I think of it like at work as he is bringing out, some people you think, you say, it's Monday. You don't know if they'll be there or not. But it'd be a whole lot better to be that one that they say, I wonder where they're at. Right. They must be something wrong or they'd be here. And we all see that situation. I do at work, but you have those that, well, it's Monday. You know, you kind of expect them not to be there. That's not what we want to do in our Christian life. We want to be there. We want to be steadfast. So that's really good. Thank the Lord. Good to see each one in the service this morning. Good to have Sister Bird with us this morning. Yeah. Thank the Lord. All right. We'll take a little short break and then we'll move on with the service, Lord willing.